Okay, again, good evening, everyone. Welcome this evening. We appreciate you joining us for a public hearing of the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council. Okay, we will get started. Again, Barbara Gwynn, Commissioner, New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. Welcome to our public hearing for the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council. I do want to certainly not only welcome folks, but also make sure folks do know that this hearing is being recorded and live streamed, as the council's meetings are subject to the open meetings law of New York State. So welcome to everyone, and welcome to folks who may be viewing this online. We will I'll provide some opening remarks, as well as Kate Breslin from Schuyler Center. And then we will take a brief break, and then we will come back and be able to hear from those who are here to provide public comments to the council, and which is, of course, the most important and the reason that we're here this evening. So again, please do help yourself to any of the food, beverages, as you join us this evening. So again, my name is Barbara Gwynn. I am the Commissioner of the New York State Office of Temporary Disability Assistance. Our agency, for those of you who don't know, oversees a wide range of public benefit programs. That includes public assistance, food assistance through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, home energy assistance. We also deliver a number of services related to homeless prevention and shelter services, and oversee the work and the direct delivery of benefits through the counties throughout the state of New York. Millions of New Yorkers rely on the benefits that we provide, and so we consider it an honor to do the work that we do, and certainly recognize the important connection between our work and the work of this Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council. Certainly, we have been through a bit of a tough time from a federal standpoint in terms of the support for our programs. I'm sure you're all aware that there have been several federal changes that are making it a bit more difficult for people to access various benefits, including food benefits, as well as medical care, housing benefits. So this is certainly making our work more challenging, but we continue to fight as much as we can against these changes, because we believe that those who are eligible for the benefits should receive them, and that providing these benefits actually is a huge economic benefit and a social benefit to communities throughout our nation. We are fortunate and thankful to live in New York State, where things are a little more I guess, encouraging in terms of helping to serve individuals in our country, in our state. And we, again, have been thankful to be able to navigate through a lot of these changes, along with the assistance from the Attorney General's office in New York. We have implemented some important changes, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I do also want to just reference that one change that our agency is currently working on, which is really important to low-income New Yorkers, is moving to much more secure chip-enabled EBT cards. So those are the cards that people use to redeem their benefits. The cards that we have currently are not secure, and that has been kind of the way the benefits have been issued throughout the nation. And so we were pleased that there was money included in this year's state budget to allow us to move that forward. We're well underway with that work, and do expect to begin issuing those replacement cards in early 2027. So again, we are here today to hear from others. We know that affordability in general is a big topic on everyone's mind, due to both of the reduction in access to benefits, but also just the significant increases in prices for a number of reasons. I do want to recognize in the room here today Juan Diaz, who is one of our Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council members. So thank you so much for joining us. I don't think so. Okay. And we may have some other members that are meeting us, or will be meeting us here this evening as well. I also want to acknowledge Aaron Stikovich from Albany County DSS, who is a tremendous leader in helping to provide benefits in Albany County. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kate Breslin to say a few words. Kate is obviously the leader of the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy, but also a very important and active member of the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council.
Hello. Thank you for that thumbs up. Thank you, Commissioner Gwynn. I'm so honored to be here with all of you tonight. My name's Kate Breslin. I'm the CEO at Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy. We're a statewide nonprofit organization working to shape New York State policy in ways that benefit all New Yorkers, especially those who are experiencing poverty or other disadvantage. And I'm thrilled that I'm an appointee to the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council. We are charged with putting forward recommendations to reduce child poverty in New York State. For us at Schuyler Center, we hope to see a day when there's no poverty. And we also hope to see a day when our policymakers consider children and families and economic hardship and poverty in every decision that they make, not just one thing, not just say, you got childcare this year, so you're good. We're looking forward to a day when our policymakers consider the impacts of every single decision on children and families in New York State. I urge all of you to speak up tonight. The Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council has been looking at data for several years. We have fantastic data analysts, and we have tried to hear from people in communities. And this is one of those chances. It's really important to us that we hear from people in communities around the state. There was a hearing a few weeks ago in Rochester, and I just want to urge anyone, if you haven't already signed up to speak, you don't have to have prepared remarks. Just say whatever is on your mind about things that you think could make a difference in our community here in the Capital Region. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. And I'll just reiterate that, if you haven't signed up to speak, but you would like to, just take a moment to go to the check-in table and sign up, and we'll make sure you get the opportunity to do so. I also just do want to acknowledge a couple of other folks here. We have Isaac McGinn, who is an Assistant Deputy Secretary with the Governor's Office, who has also been very involved in the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council from its initiation. So thank you, Isaac, for being here. And also Kat Seifert, who was an employee of our agency and has been leading the project work for the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council. So thank you, Kat. And again, just thank you to Schuyler and all the full team from the Schuyler Center who helped pull all of this together tonight and making it a good night for us tonight. Thank you. Also just want to acknowledge another thing that you should have been given when you checked in is just a feedback sheet. That's something that we would really appreciate if everyone would take a moment to fill that out. It's very simple, straightforward, hopefully, but it will be helpful for us to have that so that in addition to the verbal statements we hear tonight, we can have some general input from people from within the community in terms of your thinking about some of the issues that we're facing in terms of affordability and different ways that we can help people. So when we get to the speaker part, we will be calling people up kind of in the numerical order in which they signed up. We are not going to have the opportunity necessarily to interact with everyone, but we are listening, we are recording, and we will take all of this information back and make sure it is also shared with all members of the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council so that we can include it as part of the deliberation of our work. So just quickly, again, thank you for coming, but I do want to just quickly look at the feedback sheet. And one of the first questions on the feedback sheet is just asking people a general question about which expense is it that's most difficult for you and or your family to afford. And so I'm just going to kind of go through them, and it would be good just to get a show of hands. And then also when you complete the actual survey, you can kind of rank them in order in terms of the most difficult to afford to the least. I'm sure none of them are easy to afford, but you would be able to rank them in priority. So at this point, if we could just have, again, the question is which expense is the most difficult for your family to afford? And we could just have a show of hands. And for this, you could just keep your hand up if it's something that you struggle with, if it's more than one. But like I said, you can rank them when you actually fill out the sheet. And so housing, the cost of housing every month, rent or mortgage. Childcare, food, okay, utilities, transportation, thank you, and taxes. Okay. Of course, one of our goals is to use the tax system to help get money back to people who really need it. But I won't go too far with that one. So, okay, thank you all. I appreciate that. And the other questions on the feedback sheet are similar. So I think hopefully it'll be easy for you to complete that and leave it with us before you leave tonight. So now we're just going to take a moment to make sure that everyone in the room is aware of the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council, what we do, and why we're here. So the Poverty Reduction Council was actually established by statute and signed into law by Governor Hochul, and it is charged with studying policies that impact children in New York State and impact the fact that they are living in poverty in New York State. We are also charged with developing recommendations for how New York State can reduce child poverty by at least 50% within a 10-year period. And that 10-year period ends in January of 2032. And then also we're charged with monitoring New York's progress on reducing child poverty. So we are looking at each year when the executive budget is released. It's something that the council is charged with providing some kind of feedback and analysis on the extent to which the executive budget impacts children in poverty, both good and bad. And then we also are doing a lot, as Kate mentioned, we have a lot of data analysis that has been going on, both for purposes that was used to help us develop our recommendations in terms of having a really good sense of what policy changes would impact poverty, how much, and how does it impact kind of the disparities among race is one of the things we're also very focused on. And so our detailed data analysis allows us to have really good solid information about those policy changes. We're also, another place that we're doing analysis is with respect to enacted policies. So we have made some progress in New York over the past several years. And so part of it is we are working with an outside expert to also determine with those changes in policies, if people access what's available, which is a big if, and we'll talk about that more later as well, to what extent will those changes and investments reduce child poverty? So we know, one of the main ways we can reduce child poverty is to provide more money to people who need it at times when they need it, right? Most people don't live in poverty forever. It's often cyclical, and also with child poverty, we know that it's more pronounced among families when the children are young for a lot of different reasons that I'm sure you can all understand. We're trying to develop policies that will help provide more resources and income to those households. And another piece that we're looking at is also really the access issue. So the extent to which people can access those benefits and services that are available to them and how we can make that better. So at this point, based on all the work and analysis that the council has done, CPRAC does have a current set of recommendations that it has delivered to the governor and the legislature. And this report is available at the CPRAC website if you would like to see it. So the recommendations that have been made by the council, there are four primary recommendations to reduce child poverty. The first is to increase New York State's child tax credit to $1,500 per child for children under 16 years of age. So that's the Empire State tax credit. Our analysis determines that that would reduce child poverty by over 20% if we could make that happen. The second was to create a state housing voucher program, which would be very similar to Section 8 in its structure, in that those who receive it would only need to contribute 30% of their income toward the cost of housing, and the voucher would supplement on top of that. And they would be able to receive a benefit until they were able to fully cover the rent with that 30% of their income. And that's predicted to reduce child poverty by about 16%. Another recommendation of the council is to double the public assistance basic allowance. So what this refers to is a portion of the public assistance grant that is provided to very needy individuals and families in our state. And by doubling this portion of it, which is intended to cover kind of non-housing and utility cost, that is predicted to reduce child poverty by 18%. And then last, among the major recommendations of the council would be to establish a state-funded food benefit similar to the SNAP program that would be eligible to families who are not eligible for SNAP. So that could, but it would follow the similar eligibility rules. So for example, the biggest group we're really talking about here are non-citizens who are not eligible for the SNAP benefit. So those recommendations together have been, again, based on the analysis that we've done, would reduce child poverty by 50%. So the actions in and of themselves are not difficult to implement, but they are expensive. And so that kind of goes back to what Kate was saying about policy choices. And we're hoping that this information will help influence policy choices made in New York State so that we can reduce child poverty. With respect to the access, in terms of access to benefits, again, we're looking at those recommendations and the percentage of child poverty reduction that I just spoke to. Again, for example, the child tax credit. Well, that reduction in child poverty will only happen if everyone who's eligible accesses the credit. So we need to make sure people know about these benefits, that they understand that they may be eligible, and that they are able to relatively easily apply for these and then receive them as well in a relatively easy fashion. Because if they can't access and there are barriers to access, then we're not going to meet our objectives. We know, and believe me, I know from the work that our agency does administering benefit programs, that there are several different places where access can be impeded. One of the main ones is documentation. If you have to produce a paper to document something rather than to attest to it, obviously that's going to make it much more difficult in terms of the time tax it takes, and possibly even more than just time, but effort in trying to locate those particular documents. So the extent to which we can reduce documentation and paperwork, we can make it easier for people to access benefits. Another area is just in terms of the language that we use, right? That we want to use language that is, quote, plain language that is easily understood by people that don't work in this field day to day, not using a lot of jargon, and also hopefully not using intimidating language that makes people feel, like we do have certain requirements about integrity, but we don't want people to feel intimidated to access benefits for any reason. And then also there's just other ways, obviously, that we can just make it a lot easier for people in terms of the process and the access points that we have for people in person, online, hopefully all of the above, as well as the sisters and individuals in the community that can help people when they need help applying for different benefits. So those are things that we're also paying attention to, and also are hearing a lot from folks in the community in terms of how we can help. So on the good news, so New York, again, speaking back to the fact that New York has made some progress. since we implemented or issued the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council recommendations, there have been some positive investments in New York State that we are really pleased about. The first is that there was a significant expansion and improvement in the child tax credit. So again, this is something that when people apply, when they submit their tax forms, that they can either get a payment back based on it, or at a minimum have it reduce their tax burden so they don't have to pay that much in taxes. I mentioned earlier that CPRAC was looking for a benefit increase. So the current before any changes was $330 per child. Um, and CPRAC was looking not only for an increase in the benefit level to $1,500 per child, but also an incredibly important policy change. We wanted to make sure that those with the lowest resources, the lowest income levels, were receiving the maximum benefit. That probably seems very logical to everyone in this room, but that's not how it worked. People had to earn a certain amount before they were eligible for the maximum benefit. So really good news and great work from probably a lot of people in this room. We did have some significant changes to the child tax credit in New York. That policy change was fixed. So now those with the lowest income do receive the maximum benefit. And there were two tiers of benefit increases. The first was for children under 4 years of age. The benefit did increase from $330 to $1,000. And then for children under 16, but 4 years of age and older, it increased to 500. So again, important steps in the right direction, but not exactly to where, as the council, we would like to see changes to further reduce child poverty. Also, just on that one, we do have a bit of preliminary information just based on tax returns that have been coming in this year, which is the first year that people could start getting that $1,000 benefit for the young children. And we're seeing some positive results. Again, it's preliminary data, but we are seeing a significant infusion of money out the door, about a 50, let me just make sure I've got this right, about a 64% increase in money out the door to families in New York State as a result of that. So that's over, we've already provided over $1 billion to over 1.4 million New Yorkers. And again, based on what we're seeing, it's also an increase in filers, an increase of about 5% over the prior year filing. So that's good news. And we'll be happy to report back when we have more data on kind of the end of tax season, and then also more information we'd like to get on the demographics of who applied, including their characteristics in terms of income as well as the age of the children. With respect to, again, I mentioned that the CPRAC recommended a housing voucher program. So we did have a little bit of movement here in New York State. There's a relatively small, but again, it's been $100 million investment over 2 years in a housing voucher program in New York State that is very much structured similar to Section 8. So again, a bit of movement there. And we've had a lot of success. That's being administered by Homes and Community Renewal, but our agency's been working very closely with them to make sure that we're connecting with the social services districts, because they're really key in terms of identifying households most in need and that likely facing homelessness. So that has been the focus of that program. And then another place we have a positive outcome is with a new benefit that was enacted in last year's budget, which enables us to provide a $1,800 benefit for a parent who's receiving public assistance when they have a new child. So you can imagine that that is a meaningful amount going to those households to help them at a time where they may have had to reduce their work hours, right? So the household probably has less income and increased need because of the needs of the child. So that's another benefit that we've been able to administer. And then, of course, with this year's budget, we have had a huge infusion of funding for childcare. So we're very thankful to Governor Hochul for taking the lead and for the legislature enacting, again, a significant increase in funding for childcare vouchers in New York State. So the expectation is that that's going to benefit a lot of new households in New York State, both just better for the family overall, but also hopefully will also increase that household's ability to go to work, to have steady work, which also is obviously a key pathway out of poverty. So we've gotten some momentum. Again, we still have a lot of work to do, and we're going to keep working within the council. We're updating our recommendations. We're going to keep pushing our recommendations. We know that little by little, step by step, we still believe that we can reduce child poverty in New York State, and think that poverty in general is something that everyone should have a goal of rallying against it, especially when we're talking about poverty for children in New York State. So just quickly, I'll do one more question on the feedback, and we can do a show of hands. Um, in terms of which programs or benefits would have the biggest impact for your family. And some of this might be based on your expenses. It might be based on your family circumstances. If you don't want to raise your hand, that's fine, but please do provide information on the feedback sheet. So the first one is just a $1,500 flat amount that's provided to a family with a child who can spend that however they would like. Thank you. A housing voucher to help you pay for your rent, so that only 30% of your income is required to be contributed to your housing cost. A monthly cash benefit, about, again, if you're a family of three, of about $850 a month, to help pay for various basic necessities. Okay. And then monthly food assistance in terms of helping to buy groceries. Again, likely around $600 a month for a family of three. So those are kind of the key recommendations of the council. So thank you. Thank you for your feedback. Okay. At this point, we will take a brief break to give our ASL interpreter a moment. It's a lot to handle for one person, and we appreciate the assistance tonight. And then after the break, so we'll take a break for about 5 to 10 minutes. Again, please help yourself to food, and then we'll regroup here to here. We'll return back at 6:45. Thank you. And we'll be able to open up the floor to comment for anyone who would like to present remarks to the council. Thank you.